I love going on walks by myself. I struggle with mental health issues, and my walks alone, especially on sunny days, have been one of the only things to help alleviate my spirals and such. About a week ago, I had gone on one of my walks like normal. I started it and had noticed a guy on a motorized bike pass by the street in front of me, and I had the thought of, that is the guy that was hanging out at the gas station who was eyeing me the last time that I went on a walk. But other than that, I was like, I'm sure that he's just going on a ride, don't think too much about it. I walked down a few blocks just listening to my music and enjoying the sun when I saw him again 2 blocks down, crossing the street. But this time he had stopped in the middle of the road mid-crossing the street, and I saw him looking in my direction. This set an alert off in my head, so I took my headphones off while continuing to walk, so I could have a bit more awareness of my surroundings. I decided to turn right on the block that I was on because I was not wanting to meet up with that guy. As I got down towards the end of the block, I heard his bike again, so I turned around to see if he was an eye shot. He was. He was at the church on the next block over on the same street parked, and he was looking in my direction again. I only looked for a couple of seconds because I was scared if he saw me looking at him, he would think that I wanted to talk to him. The road that I was on led directly to an isolated road where there's a large field and not too many houses. That's the usual path that I take on my walks, but I had a very strong gut feeling telling me not to go that way this time. So I had turned the corner onto the street that takes me directly back to my house. It felt almost as if he was waiting to see which direction I was going to take, because as soon as I had turned, I heard his bike rev up again. I was starting to feel quite panicked, so I started to rapid-fire text my boyfriend, just as a someone needs to know my location type of thing. As I got to the block in front of my house, ready to cross the street to head back home, I saw him a block down to my right, yet again crossing the street, and he was looking around him as if he was searching. I quickly crossed the street before he saw me and ran to my house. Am I being irrational in my fear? I will say that I have PTSD and deal with quite severe hypervigilance because of it, but the gut feeling was so intense that it was almost like a weird intuition. I haven't gone on a walk since it happened. I keep pepper spray on me everywhere that I go, but I am of small stature and feel as though I wouldn't have much strength to fight off an attack, so I'm just scared. Thanks for listening to me ramble. At the time of events, my brother, my father, and I, a 16-year-old male, are road tripping through Nevada and California as my graduation gift. It is the end of August, and after a long trip, coming from Las Vegas, cruising through Los Angeles, and heading north across to California, we decided to stay in beautiful Santa Barbara for a few days. My father finds a place to stay not too far from the beach, and we are all in wonder as to the movie-like beauty of the city that we are staying in. In the evening of our first night there, being back to the place shortly after feasting on greasy and savory pizza from Rusty's Pizza Parlor, and walking along one of the most beautiful beaches in the USA, I start to get bored in the room. After having watched the television with my father and my brother for about an hour, to change the scenery a bit, I decide to peek through our room window. As I kneel on the raspy purple carpeted floor and draw the thick and heavy curtains out, a sense of dread takes hold of my whole being. I'm startled by the thing I see right across the street, about 100 feet from my window. What I'm looking at is at odds with the beautiful picture-like frame created by the hotel lobby entrance arc, delimiting it from my field of view. A beautiful shadow and light setting created by the streetlight beam on the pavement on the other side of the road, reveals this man whose physical traits are hooded by the shadows cast downward by the light. Right under the streetlight, he is standing half in the light, half in the dark of the night, as if in the knowing of the effect the lighting has on him. He looks like he's in his late 20s, early 30s, and stares right at me. His gaze, like a laser beam, I can feel all the way down to my kidneys. I can't see his crazy eyes from this distance, but I can feel them, as my subconscious picks up on the intent, which is not good. He seems to have waited for me to look at him for a long time, as if he knew it would happen. He seems to have known, just as you know you will hear thunder after seeing a lightning. A few seconds after he's made aware of my awareness of his presence, still staring at me, he starts in a slow, clock-like motion, sliding his index finger sideways across his throat, underneath his jaw from left to right, over and over again. It is as if he is silently telling me, "I'll kill you. That's right, I'll do it. Yes, yes." As the floor beneath me starts to sink and a taste of metal overwhelms the top of my tongue, I close the curtains as quick as if my life depends on it. I then turn my upper body away from the window, towards my father, and tell him what I saw. He seems to shrug it off, and talking over the baseball game on TV, tells me to let it go. But I can feel, along this calm vibe of arrogant carefreeness coming from him, a hint of uneasiness that I can taste on the back of my mouth. 30 seconds go by, and I stupidly kneel uncomfortably again on the carpet below the windowsill. After loudly swallowing for luck, against my best judgment, I draw the curtains out a second time, but this time, my hands stop at the width of my head, allowing me to view just enough of the outside world to be able to grasp at what is happening outside of my seemingly safe room. There he is again. Only this time, the man is standing 2/3 of the way to where he stood the first time I saw him. His facial traits are now darkened by the lack of a streetlight, but I can still feel his crazy gaze. He is under the hotel lobby parking lot arc. There is not much light where he stands, but I can still perceive him doing his throat-slicing gesture. That's right, I'll kill you. He still communicates to me through his pantomime. There is this desperate feeling of unfair doom in realizing that your poor, vulnerable self is the target of something evil that doesn't even know you as a being, with needs and fears, but knows and wants something from you which you are oblivious to. I'm starting to feel queasy and frightened. I close the curtains quickly once again, and tell my dad again of the man's presence and his approaching of the room. I get on the bed, trying to concentrate on the TV to forget what I've just witnessed. I don't remember if my dad looks through the window to confirm what's happening. I remember him telling me to stop looking outside, if what I see is scaring me, and that we are safe in the room, which is locked. After what seems like a few minutes passing, I peek again for the last time. This time, the man is right in the parking lot, about 50 feet from our room, doing his gesture again. I start thinking that this man is probably mentally ill or something, and then I better stop looking out the window again. A clever thing I do, I tell myself. The man's behavior, although redundant and pathetic, nonetheless strikes me as being ominous and frightening. The night goes on with that feeling that even if I'm probably safe inside a room, there is this disturbed man missing a few cogs who's got nothing to lose outside the room, that behaves as if he wants nothing good for me. As far as I know, he could be leaning right on the window glass a few minutes from now if this keeps going. Would he be grinning or not? Would he raise his arm to gently tap on the window while kneeling under the windowsill? I try not to think about it. I sleep uneasily that night. The following morning, not wanting to go outside of the room, I decide to stay in with my brother while my father goes to the lobby to fetch orange juice at breakfast and to speak to the clerk about the man outside. My father comes back after a couple of minutes with our breakfast and tells me that the clerk told him that the guy who frightened me the night before is known in the area for his mental illnesses. He's probably a schizophrenic, is what the guy said to my father. My dad then reassures me that the clerk told him the man is not dangerous and that we're safe staying there for another couple of nights. Luckily, I never see the man again for the duration of our stay there. Fast forward a couple of years. My father and I are reminiscing about our trip to California, and especially those days in Santa Barbara. When the mentally ill man threatening me with his finger outside of our room is mentioned in the conversation, my father, as if relieved from not having to keep this thing secret anymore, let out that the morning after that dreadful night, the clerk had told him in fact to be careful with the man. He had told me that he was in fact dangerous. My dad just didn't want to scare us telling us the truth. I thanked him for lying to me that morning. And we agreed that luckily, we never saw the man again during our stay there. I'm a 35-year-old female and my story takes place when I was 15, but it feels like yesterday. It was the day that would change my innocent youth forever. I'm from a little village in Ireland with a population of a few hundred. The nearest town is about 10 miles away. Growing up in rural Ireland was very idealistic. Summers were spent playing football with neighbors or going to the lake swimming till the sun went down. I was lucky that even though the population is small and the houses are far apart, that my best friend's house was only down the road. So during those summer months, Mary and I were inseparable. My friend and I grew up with lots of brothers and sisters in a safe village. We were given a lot of freedom and sometimes we were gone all day and only came back before dark. As it was the middle 90s and we had no phones, but our moms knew we would be okay and look out for each other. One thing that we liked to do during these summer months, besides going to the lake and hanging out at each other's houses, was to go to town and look around the shops. The easiest way to get into town was to hitchhike, as there were no buses. Here in Ireland, we call it thumbing. Hardly anyone hitches now because most households have 2 cars and parents are a lot more protective. But back in the 80s and 90s, it was very common. Our parents were okay with it, but there were certain rules that we had to follow. I'm not entirely sure who came up with the rules, but I assume that our parents did. Rule number 1. Never hitch alone. You must thumb with at least 1 or 2 friends. Number 2. Never take a lift if there are 2 or more men in the car, but 2 or more women is fine. Number 3. Never take a lift from someone in a van. There could be more guys hiding in the back or worse, ropes, blindfolds, etc. Number 4. And this was the most important rule. When a car stops to pick you up, always ask the driver where they're going first. If you tell them where you're going first, they could pretend that they're going to the same place to lure you in. We were innocent but had common sense, so we followed the rules down to a T. At least we tried to. My friends Mary and I used to hitch once a week during the summer. We would go to town with a population of only a few thousand and look around the shops, eat ice cream, and hang out. When we got a ride, we had to make small talk with the driver and his two shy 15-year-olds. This bit sucked the most. To make it fair, we took turns sitting in the front and did most of the talking. One day, we spent a few hours in town. It was pretty uneventful, so we decided to thumb it back. At around 3 p.m., we went to the usual spot to hitch from, just on the outskirts of town. We were only waiting for about 5 minutes when a white car pulled up. And before we could ask where he was going, he asked us first. My friend told him, and he said that he was passing through our village on the way to another one. Rule number 4 broken, but he seemed nice enough and we just wanted to go home. It was my turn to sit in the front. The driver introduced himself as John, a farmer, and was super friendly. He was dressed in a worn t-shirt with holes in it. He had tattered pants and smelled of cow poop. The car was full of bits of straw and was old and battered like the driver. He was about 60, had no wedding ring on. Don't ask me why, but I always noticed these little things. About halfway between town and our home village, he asked if we heard a noise, and we didn't reply. "There it is again. It sounds like a banging noise," he said. I didn't hear anything, so I sat there quietly. "No, I think it might be the exhaust pipe," he said. "I'll have to pull in and have a look." He pulled up on a busy road and went out to take a look. "I didn't hear anything," said Mary. "He seems like a weirdo," I said. Call it intuition, but even though he was super friendly and chatty, I got a bad feeling from him. The next thing, he comes back to the driver's side and tells us that the exhaust is hanging down and it was hitting off the road, and he needs us to help him tie it up. It was then that I noticed that he had a string holding up his pants instead of a belt. I thought this was odd. Anyway, he got some string of the boot, same color string as his belt, and we both got out of the car. Although I got a bad vibe from him, I didn't feel scared at this stage. We were on a busy road and it was only about 3:30 p.m., so we both got out of the car. He showed us the exhaust pipe hanging down and used a rag to hold it up because it was hot. My friend Mary took over holding it up, while he secured it with the string. They were both kneeling while I just stood back and watched. It was then that I noticed his fly was open, and I could see his privates, and he was clearly not wearing any underwear. He didn't even have a belt, so I guess I wasn't too surprised. In my head I thought, "Oh my gosh, what is going on? Crap, but I said nothing. I just stood there in shock. Mary hadn't noticed at this stage and just continued to hold the pipe. When John was standing up, he noticed his fly was open and acted all shocked. "Oh girls, I'm sorry and embarrassed. I only have a safety pin holding the fly together and it must have come off. Please forgive me and get back in the car." Mary was stunned and got a close-up on his privates, which left me to do the talking. I told him that it was okay and that it was an accident, so we got back in the car. He fastened the safety pin even though I didn't see him look for it. All was hidden again. Back in the car, the atmosphere was very different. We both felt mortified and he kept apologizing over and over. I looked out the passenger window and just repeated, "It's okay, it's okay." Then he said something that turned my stomach. "Oh well, girls, you had taken it very well. If I didn't know any better, I would swear that you liked it." And then he nudged me in the arm with his arm, like you do to a friend. I looked at him through the corner of my eye, my face still facing the window, when I noticed that his fly was undone again, and that he was exposed again. He must have noticed me looking because he said, "Oh, the safety pin keeps opening, just don't look." Fine by me, I thought, but I said okay and continued to look out the window. He kept nudging me and saying, don't be looking," giggling at the same time. He was doing this in a playful way, like it was all a joke. Mary started giggling too, because when she's nervous, she laughs. I knew it wasn't her fault, but I was getting angry at this stage. He wouldn't stop telling me to stop looking. And then he said, "Your friend is laughing, she must be enjoying the view." And this made her laugh even harder. Now remember, we're both polite 15-year-olds that always respect our elders and are a little shy, so I would never speak up to an adult. The nudging in my arm and my friend laughing was all getting to be too much. He asked if it was the first Willie that I had ever seen, and told me once again to stop looking. I was turned facing the passenger window, so much so that I had my back to him. There was no way that I could be looking. I lost my temper. I shouted at the top of my voice, "I'm not looking. Mary, shut up and stop laughing." Silence followed. He said that he was sorry and that he was only joking, and there was no need to be so serious. I said nothing and sat there, red with temper. I should have told him to let us out. I should have told him to cover himself up, the dirty old guy. But I was in shock too, and part of me wanted to believe it was all an innocent mistake. We finally arrived at our tiny, safe little village. We got out and he said again that he was sorry about the whole thing. My friend got her voice back and assured him that it was okay. I said that it was all okay and it was nothing to worry about. I said thanks for the lift. What he said back sickened me. He looked me up and down with this creepy smile and said, "Oh girlies, thanks for everything," and he drove off. We were left speechless. We sat down on a nearby bench to process all of this before going home. We made a deal that we wouldn't tell our parents there that they would never let us hitchhike again. My friend finally got her voice back and repeated, "What a weirdo, smelly old guy. He had this plan the whole time," over and over. About 5 minutes after sitting down on the bench, who drives by going the direction that we just came from? You guessed it, little old guy Farmer John, waving and smiling while we sat there stunned. He had beeped to catch our attention, so much for passing through our village. A few months later, and the ordeal went to the back of my mind. Occasionally, we would talk about Farmer John, but we made jokes about it and we told some of our friends about what had happened. One day, I told a friend of mine named Brid. A cousin of hers had told her a very similar story. The cousin lived in another village about 20 miles in the other direction from town. She was only a few years older than us. While hitchhiking home one day, the same thing happened to her and her friend. The exhaust, the safety pin, and the undone fly. It was no accident, and my worst fears were confirmed. Farmer John really was a weirdo.